Somewhere inside the Red Bull motorhome this weekend, a phone call nobody was supposed to know about finally surfaces. And the moment it does, everything the paddock thinks it knows about Max Verstappen stops making sense. This call does not come from a rival trying to steal him away. It comes from his own side. The team that spent years building the most feared driver on the grid is now standing in its own garage, at its own home race, in front of its own fans, learning what that driver has quietly been doing behind their backs. And there is one line buried deep in his contract that turns a piece of paddock gossip into something Red Bull genuinely has reason to fear. This is the story Red Bull did not want breaking at the Red Bull Ring. Their race, their hills, their sea of orange and blue stretching up the grandstands of Spielberg. The one weekend of the year the whole sport comes to their house. And this is the weekend the news lands that Max Verstappen, the man who delivered them 4 straight drivers' titles, has people quietly talking to the enemy. The team that gets the call is McLaren. The same McLaren that took the title away from him last year. The same McLaren whose car beats his almost every single Sunday in 2026. And the contact does not come from McLaren chasing him. It comes from his camp reaching out to them. That is the detail that changes the whole shape of this thing. A driver under contract does not let his management go knocking on a rival door unless something at home is already broken. And with the summer break getting closer by the day, this is exactly the kind of crack Red Bull cannot afford to let open. Start with the part that is confirmed, because the confirmed part is bad enough on its own. Multiple senior reporters with real sources inside this paddock say the same thing. A conversation took place between Verstappen's side and McLaren's chief executive. It is described as informal, preliminary, a sounding out rather than a sit down to sign anything. But it happened. The man at the center of McLaren took the meeting, because taking that meeting when a 4-time champion comes knocking is simply his job. And that is the part Red Bull cannot wave away. A meeting they were never meant to hear about, between their champion's own people and the team beating them almost every Sunday, confirmed by the reporters who do not deal in fantasy. And underneath it sits one fact that does not move. Verstappen's management is testing the market, and they are testing it on the team building the fastest car in the world. Now sit with what that means for the team paying him. For years the deal between Max and Red Bull was simple. He drives like nobody else alive, and they hand him a machine capable of winning. That was the contract underneath the contract, the unwritten one. And in 2026, for the first time in a long time, Red Bull cannot hold up their end of it. Look at where he actually sits. 7th in the Drivers' Championship. 7th. A 4-time world champion. A man who won more races in a single season than anyone in history, sitting 7th on the board with 73 points to his name. The leader of this championship is a teenager in a Mercedes who has already won 5 times this year. The gap from Max to the top of the table is now close to 100 points. 100 points, before the season is even halfway done. Verstappen is not fighting for the crown. He is fighting to be the best of the rest. And he knows exactly how far that is from where he belongs. Remember, this is a man who lost last year's title by the smallest of margins. 2 points. 2 points across an entire season, edged out of the title by the very McLaren driver his people just called. He went to the final rounds of 2025 still swinging, still in the fight, still a threat to win it all. 1 year later he is 7th, staring up at cars he used to lap. For a competitor built the way Max is built, that fall is more than frustrating. It is unbearable. His own description of the car says it all. He calls it the 4th fastest thing on the grid. Not the fastest, not the 2nd, the 4th. Behind Mercedes, behind Ferrari, and yes, behind the McLaren his people just called. Red Bull sit 4th in the constructors' standings, more than 40 points behind the very team he is being linked with. Read that back. The driver everyone calls the best on earth is stuck in the 4th best car, watching 3 rival teams disappear up the road, and his contract has a way out written into it. And that way out is the real story here. That is the loaded gun. For the first time, the people who run Verstappen's career have admitted in public what the paddock long suspected. There are exit clauses in his Red Bull deal. There always have been. His manager confirms it plainly. A contract that runs to the end of 2028 on paper, with escape hatches built into it that can open long before then. They have never pulled one before, they have never needed to, but they have one. And in 2026, the conditions to open it are lining up almost perfectly. Here is how that hatch reportedly works. If Verstappen sits outside the top 2 of the Drivers' Championship at a fixed point around the summer break, he is free to walk for the following season. That is the mechanism, as understood by the reporters closest to it. And look again at the board. 7th, not 2nd, not 3rd. 7th, with a yawning gap to the front and only a handful of races left before that cut-off arrives. Barring a miracle, the condition that springs the lock is about to be met. That wasn't even the part that got Red Bull truly nervous. The part that stings is the timing. Because the clause has a deadline attached, a date by which Verstappen must decide whether to trigger it, reportedly tied to the end of September. And rather than wait and sweat on that date, Red Bull are said to have tried something almost desperate. They reportedly offered him money, reported €8 million, just to delete that clause from the contract, to make the escape hatch disappear before he could ever use it. He said no. Of course he said no. Why would the best driver in the world hand back the one piece of leverage he has in the exact season his team has finally given him a slow car? He keeps the clause, he keeps the freedom, and he lets his management quietly go and see what else is out there, which is precisely where the phone call to McLaren comes in. So that is the trap Red Bull are sitting in. A champion they cannot satisfy on track, a clause they cannot buy back, and a market that has suddenly opened its arms to him. To understand how fast all this turned, you have to remember where Red Bull stood not so long ago. Less than 2 years back, this was the team everyone feared. The team that won almost everything. The team Verstappen dragged to a level of dominance the sport had rarely seen. They were not the fourth best anything. They were the standard everyone else was measured against. And then the ground shifted under them. The sport tore up its rulebook for 2026. A brand new set of regulations, and a brand new kind of power unit. Red Bull chose to build their own engine for this era. A huge gamble, parting ways with the partner that powered their golden run. Honda walked to a rival, and the car that came out the other side, the one they call the RB22, is not the weapon Max is used to. It is overweight, off the pace, and built around a power unit still finding its feet against established giants. The team that wrote the rules of dominance suddenly cannot find the front. The people in charge changed too. The man who ran this team for 2 decades, the principal who was there for every single one of those titles, is gone, removed from his post last season after a storm that engulfed the whole organization. The veteran advisor who discovered Verstappen as a teenager and guided his entire career, also gone, retired and absent from the paddock. The faces Max trusted, the structure he grew up inside, much of it has been dismantled around him. The new man in charge says the right things. He says Max has made clear he wants to stay. He says it is equally clear Max needs a fast car to be happy. Both of those things can be true at once, and both of them point at the same problem, the clock. And just to make the picture even more tangled, Red Bull picked this exact weekend to show a flicker of life. A fresh upgrade package arrives on the car, a reworked floor, a new look to the bodywork, and suddenly the RB22 has some bite again. Verstappen drags it to second place here, his best result of the entire season, finishing within touching distance of the win. For one afternoon, it looks like the old Red Bull, which only sharpens the knife. Because now the question is not simply whether the car is broken, it is whether this team can find that pace often enough, fast enough, to convince the best driver alive that staying is worth it. One good Sunday does not rebuild trust, but it does buy them a sliver of hope right when they need it most. Now, here is where it gets genuinely interesting. Because Red Bull are not the only team in this story with a problem. McLaren has one too. And the moment you look at their side of it, this whole thing gets stranger, not simpler. McLaren do not have a free seat. They have the 2 best young drivers in the sport, the pair who just delivered them back-to-back constructors titles, and both of them are locked in through at least the end of 2027. The champion who beat Max to the crown last year, signed. His teammate, the one half the grid would give anything to have, signed. There is no empty chair at McLaren for next season. None. Which leaves one question hanging in the air. If there is no seat waiting for him next year, then what, exactly, is Verstappen's camp doing in that room at all? And McLaren are playing it perfectly coy. The boss on the grid put it in his own dry way, saying he would be very surprised if either of his drivers left, because they are happy where they are. But then he left the door open just a crack. If, for some strange reason, one of them slipped on a banana peel climbing out of the car, then yes, of course, Max is a 4-time world champion, which is the most McLaren way imaginable of saying we are not looking, but we are not blind either. So if there is no seat for next year, why is Verstappen's camp even calling? And it is not as if the other big door is standing open either. For 2 seasons, the loudest rumor around Max was Mercedes. Their boss chased him openly, made no secret of wanting him, kept a seat warm in case the champion ever wobbled. That door just shut. This very weekend, Mercedes confirmed they are keeping their lineup exactly as it is. Their own young star is 100% staying, no announcement needed, no drama. With a teenager leading the championship for them, Mercedes have no reason to blow up a winning pairing for anybody, even Verstappen. So the most obvious escape route Max had is suddenly closed, which makes the McLaren call look less like a wild flirtation, and more like a man methodically working the only doors left. 2 reasons sit behind it, and both of them should worry Red Bull more than a simple transfer ever could. The first reason is the year after, 2028. That is when contracts across the grid start to breathe again, when the locked doors at the front of the field start to open. A driver thinking about the back half of his career does not wait until a seat is empty to build the relationship. He starts early. He gets his people in the room now, so that when the music stops, he already has a chair. And there is one more detail that makes McLaren the obvious place to start. The engineer who has sat on Verstappen's pit wall through every championship, the voice in his ear for years, the man who knows how to get the best out of him on the days when nothing is working, is himself heading to McLaren. And he is not the only one. Key technical names who helped build Red Bull's golden run have already made the same move to Woking, quietly stacking up inside the team at the front of the grid. The brains that designed Max's dominance are reassembling somewhere else. When the people who know how to win with you start gathering under one roof, and that roof is not yours, the message could not be clearer. The bond that defined Max's greatest seasons is quietly relocating. Where your trusted engineers go, your attention follows. The second reason is colder and far more useful to Verstappen right now. Leverage. Nothing puts pressure on a team like the sight of your star driver shopping somewhere else. Every time his name turns up in a meeting room at a rival, Red Bull feel the floor move. It is a message sent without a single word being spoken. Fix the car, or lose me. And there is no louder way to send it than letting it leak at your home race. Which brings us to the strangest twist in the whole affair. Because the version you have heard, the one about a secret deal blown open by a leak, might have the villain completely backwards. If you are getting value out of this breakdown, take a second to subscribe, because this is the kind of story that moves every few days, and we follow it all the way to the end. Enter the man at the center of McLaren, the chief executive who took that meeting. Think about what he actually gains here. His title rivals, the team chasing his cars all season, are wounded and unstable. Their champion is unsettled. Their home race is this weekend. And suddenly a story breaks suggesting that Champion is eyeing the exit, right there in front of Red Bull's own fans. One of the most respected voices in the paddock floated the theory out loud. This is exactly the kind of move a clever operator makes. Stir the pot. Make heat for your rival at the worst possible moment. Let the whisper out yourself and watch the other team spend their home weekend answering questions about their driver instead of celebrating their podium. There is a name for this game inside the sport. The Piranha Club. The idea that the people running these teams will brief, leak, and plant stories to unsettle each other, all while smiling on the grid. And under that lens, the leak stops looking like a betrayal from inside Verstappen's camp and starts looking like a weapon, fired by the one man who profits most from Red Bull looking weak at home. Nobody can prove it. The voice who raised it admits he has not put it to the McLaren boss directly, but it fits. It fits the timing, it fits the venue, and it fits the man who gains the most. And it tells you something important about this entire saga. You are not watching a transfer. You are watching a power play. Verstappen himself waved the whole thing away. He says the noise does nothing for him, that he pays it no attention. In an age where anyone can fake anything, he says, you can Photoshop a story into existence, and the internet will run with it. It is a cool answer, a calm answer. But notice what he did not say. He did not deny that his people made contact. He did not slam the door. He did not promise to see out his contract. He simply called the drama overblown and let the most important question hang in the air completely unanswered. And his manager said something far more revealing about the bigger picture. The goal, he said, is to finish the adventure with Red Bull. But Max was not born to race in the midfield. Sit with that line. That is not loyalty. That is a condition. Stay, but only if the car is worthy. Finish the journey together, but not back here in the pack. It is the same message the leak sends, just dressed in politer clothes. And underneath all the noise sits a picture far more dangerous for Red Bull than any single headline. The contact with McLaren is real. The clause is real, and it is about to become active. The buyback offer they made and he refused is real. The car is genuinely fourth fastest, by his own measure. And the deadline on that escape hatch is creeping closer with every race that passes. In a matter of weeks, Verstappen would understand exactly how much power this clause hands him. The summer break is the pressure point. 3 races stand between now and that cutoff. Britain, Belgium, Hungary. If Red Bull cannot drag this car toward the front in that window, the condition to open the hatch is met, and the most wanted driver in the world becomes free to listen to anyone he likes for the season after. The clock was already ticking. He just made sure everyone could hear it. And maybe that was the entire point. Not a deal, not a defection. A warning. Made loud and public at the one venue designed to hurt the most. Verstappen has not signed anything with anyone. He may well still be in a Red Bull next year, and the year after that. But the quiet, comfortable certainty that he was a Red Bull driver for life, the thing this team built its whole identity around, is gone. He has shown them and shown the entire grid that the door is not locked. It never was. The real question is no longer whether McLaren has a seat. It is whether Red Bull can build a car fast enough to make Max stop looking for one. Because the moment the best driver on the planet starts taking those meetings, the team that thought they owned his future finds out they were only ever renting it. And the lease is almost up. And think about what walking away would actually cost this team. Red Bull built more than a car around Max Verstappen. They built an era around him, an entire engine project. A brand new power unit program launched for this rule change was gambled on the idea that the best driver in the world would be there to make it worth the risk. Lose him, and that gamble loses its point. The sponsors who came for Max, the young drivers who joined hoping to learn beside him, the whole gravity of the team bends around one man. Pull him out, and Red Bull lose far more than a driver. They lose the center of everything they have been building toward. That is why this clause terrifies them, not because of one rumor, but because of everything that unravels if he ever uses it. Red Bull have until the end of summer to remind Verstappen why he made them his home. If they cannot, the next leak out of that motorhome will not be a phone call, it will be a goodbye. So here is what to watch. 3 races, 1 clause, 1 deadline, and a champion who just stopped pretending he is happy. Drop a comment with where you think Verstappen lines up in 2027. Hit subscribe so the next chapter lands the moment it breaks, and keep your eyes on that summer break. Because everything about Max Verstappen's future runs through it.